All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Nisan, Said and Simehikin, for dedicating all the Shumer and Drashos this month to show their Hakar Satov to Hashem for all of his Nisim and Niflaos. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu continue to bestow his Rachmanas upon us, redeem all of the hostages, and bring complete Hatzlacha to our precious soldiers, to Am Yisrael, and to Eretz Yisrael. And Le'ilu Nishmas Yachmiel Bak's father, Martin Bak, Matel Ben Chaim Leibak Kohen Zichron Livracha. Our week of learning sponsors: Paul and Kathy Pollack, in memory of Paul's mother, Florette Pollack, Sarah Bas Avram Zichron Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshamas Lavin Aliyah and the families in Nechama. So with that, let us begin. A lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Some really exciting Gemara ahead of us as well. So we are picking up today's daf is Samech Hey 65. We are picking up on Samech Talam base 64b at the Iked de Amri. It is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 lines up from the bottom. So remember again, we were introduced to the Mishnah yesterday, a really interesting Mishnah, that if essentially, a very simple halacha, that if you lend money to someone, it almost feels like this is what like the parak should have started with, as it's a very straightforward case. You lend money to someone, is this very loud, or is it, it's okay? Okay, if you go ahead and you lend money to someone, so you cannot live in their property either rent-free or at a diminished rent, because to do so ultimately again would allow the lender to go ahead and acquire an additional benefit, and that would constitute ribis. See Igid Amri, so we'll say that's version 1. Version 2, Igid Amri, Amar Rabbi Yosef Bar Yomi, Amar Rav Nachman, Afa Pisha Amar Adarech Hatzachaver Shalom Midaito, in Tzarach Lalas Lo Schar. Even though in general the halacha is like this: if you live in someone's property without their knowledge, you don't have to pay them rent. Now, this is an important statement to qualify. What does that mean? Remember, there are many qualifications of this. This is halacha l'maisa. If you go ahead and it's not normally a property that's rented out, right? So remember again, you live in someone's property that it doesn't normally rent out, he's eino chaser. That person is not diminished. He's not put at a disadvantage. So I may benefit, zenene v'zeino chaser. Even though normally that is permitted, Halaveni v'dar bechatzeri sarach lahalos lo schar. I will say, but let's say for example, if I go over to Reuven and Reuven says, "Hey Silber, lend me $10,000, and if you do so, you can live in my property rent free," then that is usher. That is usher. Now I will say, which logical? Why is it usher? That's ribis. That's ribis. Now I will say, I just want to be clear. If I lend Reuven $10,000 and Reuven says, "You can live in my home rent free," and every month, will diminish the principal by the amount of the rent, that's fine, right? That's just another form of repayment. The issue over here is that Reuven's going to pay me the $10,000, plus I'm getting the benefit of living in his home rent-free. That's where ribis comes in. So we'll say, so what's the difference in the two versions? In version one, there was no statement tying the rent to the loan. In version 1, I lent Reuven $10,000, right? That was the loan, that was the transaction. And then just as an aside, right, I started living in his house rent-free. But there was never a stipulation between the two of us. In version 2, there was an explicit stipulation. Reuven said, lend me $10,000, I'll pay you back in a year, and in the interim, you can live in my house rent-free. So in version 2, there's an explicit stipulation. So man da'amar halveu kol shekin halveini. So the one who subscribes to version 1, certainly that is problematic, certainly agrees that version 2 is problematic. Because version 1, where there is no explicit stipulation, is going to be ribis. So certainly version 2, where there is an explicit stipulation, is going to be ribis. Uman da'amar halveini halvehu lo. I will say, but the one who subscribes to version 2, where there's an explicit stipulation, he said that's ribis, but version 1 wouldn't be a problem of ribis. My time, what's the reason? I will say, see, in version 1, since the loan was not made with the intention of the free rent, therefore, it doesn't serve as a problem. See, in version 1, I lent Reuven $10,000. Okay, then whatever. The next day, a week later, a month later, I begin to utilize his property rent-free. So according to version, right, the Mandamar version 2 would say that according to that, version 1 is not a problem. Why? Because it was never part of the stipulation. It was never part of the transaction. So therefore, again, it does not constitute ribbis. I will say, it happens, we don't paskin that way. We paskin that, again, even if the free rent was not part of the transaction, it's still problematic. It's still problematic because anytime you are getting an additional benefit in addition to the payment of your principal, whether or not it was stipulated or not, but it's clear or it's possible that in some way that additional benefit is related to what? The fact that I lent someone money, that's ribbis. That's ribbis. So I'll say this is actually a very important piece. Again, I was mentioned about this yesterday. I think maybe over Shavuos, maybe we'll take some opportunity to do some different ribbis cases, because there's some really incredible cases. Because what this means is as follows: if you lend someone money, you have to be very careful about getting favors from that person. Because those, again, even though it's not like I lent Ruben $1,000, I walk over, so can I borrow a cup of sugar? Remember that $1,000 I lent you? Right? Obviously, it's not that. But just in general, there is a concern in halacha that if you lend someone money, any additional favors that you get from that person may carry a problem of rivers. So just something to keep in mind. Anyway, let's go back there. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama, so it's an interesting case here. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama, Takif Avdei De'inshi Demasek Behu Zuzi, Va'avid Behu Avidita. So Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama lent money to someone. Right? He lent money to someone, and what happened? And he lent money to Ruvain. Then afterwards, he seized is a strong word. He took Ruvain's Eved and took Ruvain's Eved to his house, Rav Yosef's house, to do work for him. Amarle Rava Brei. So Rav Yosef's son said to him, "My time Avid Marhachi. Why did you conduct yourself this way?" So to which Rav Yosef responded, because Rav say again, it appears like ribbis, right? Rav Yosef lent Ruvain money, and then Rav Yosef afterwards goes and takes Ruvain's Eved to do work in Rav Yosef's house. So Rav Yosef's son says, Tate, right? Manishtana, what's going on over here? How are you able to do this? This should be ribbis. So the Gemara says, Amrlei, Anak Rav Nachman Svirlei. Achan look Rav Nachman. What does Rav Nachman say? Don't Rav Nachman, Avda Nuhum Kreise Lo Shavi. An Eved usually isn't worth the value of filling his stomach. I was about to say, what this means is most avadim underperform, right? They're lost leaders. They underperform. So therefore, again, an Eved is usually never working for his keep. So therefore, again, he's underperforming by Ruvain anyway. I just took him to my house to do some work, because at least if I take him to my house, what am I going to do? I'm going to feed him. So in fact, I'm saving Ruvain some money, because generally on any given day, an Eved doesn't even generate enough income to pay for himself. So like this, I took the Eved, I'm feeding him, I'm not causing Ruvain any kind of loss. So Rava said, the Gemara says, so Amrle Eimer de Amrav Nachman ki gon dari avdei de markid beikuvi. So we'll say, so maybe when Rav Nachman said that, he was talking about a servant like his servant Dari. So we'll say, so this servant was an interesting guy. So Dari, apparently, he wasn't so into work. Yeah, I know a lot of people like that, right? He just wasn't so into work. So what would he do? But he had an incredible talent. He was a good dancer. He would go to the local tavern and he would dance for drinks, right? He would do a little dance and people would buy him a l'chaim. So maybe when Rav Nachman was saying that, he was talking about his own Eved experience. However, again, the Gemara says, Achrini, mi amar, but we think Rav Nachman was just making like a sweeping statement about all avadim. That seems to be improbable. So Rav Yosef said, you're right. Amar le ana kihad Rav Daniel bar Katino. Amar Rav Svirali. Da Amar hatokif avdo shachaver va'asa b'malacha pater. So Rav Yosef said, you're right. I hold like a different position of Rav Daniel bar Katino. So Rav Daniel bar Katino said the name of Rav, that if you go ahead and you seize someone's Eved to do work. Now, so we're talking about a case over here. Let's say Ruvain as an Eved, and Ruvain's Eved is not doing any work right now. And I go and I take Ruvain's Eved and I bring him to my house to do work. That ultimately, again, I am pater. I don't owe Ruvain anything. Why is that? We've seen this before. Top of Samachai 65a. Denechalei delonistri avdei. Because I will say it is in the master's best interest that what? That the slave, that the servant doesn't have any idle time. Right? Idle time for avodim. Idle time for avodah, I will say, is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. So therefore, again, Rav Yosef posited, I was able to take Ruvain's I was able to take Ruvain's Eved because this way I put him to work. He's no longer idle, and I'm actually doing it. It's actually a benefit. It's actually a favor that I am providing for Ruvain. I will say it is an incredible Musar Haskell as well. We too are Avadim. We are Avdei Hashem, right? We are Avdei Hashem. And I will say, in fact, again, this was the entire essence of Pesach, is that we became Avdei Hashem, v'lo Avdei Paro. It's the essence of the Yom Tov of Pesach. And I will say, what does the Gemara say? What is the most important thing for an Eved? What is the important thing for an Eved? No idle time. Now, I just want to be clear. No idle time doesn't mean that a person is working every minute. It doesn't mean that a person is learning every minute. But it means there's no idle time. Idle time means, we're supposed to say, there should be no part of your life that is unscripted. The Piagetz writes about this. The Rebbe writes that every part of your day should be scripted. Even your relaxation. You want to relax? Great. You are absolutely relaxed. How much time are you relaxing for? Right? What are the hours of relaxation? You want to sleep? Fantastic. What are the hours of sleep? The Rebbe says the goal is there should not be any unscripted time. That when I look back at my day, I should be able to account for how I used every. And it's incredible. The Piaget himself writes, he says, you want to hang out with friends? I mean, he doesn't know the illusion of hanging out, but you want to hang out with friends? Great, go for it. How long? How long? And everything should be scripted. That is a life that prevents one from falling into the clutches of idleness. Because for an Eved, the bane of an Eved's existence is idle, unscripted time. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Amalei, so Rabbi said, Hani mili hecha de la masik beizuzei. So Rabbi said, here's the problem. Here's the problem. He said, Father, that's fine. In other words, yes, you could take someone's Eved and do work with him in order not to keep him idle, but Lamaisa, here's the problem. Father, you lent money to Ruvain. You lent money to Ruvain. Even though normally the halacha is that if you live in someone's home rent-free when they don't rent out that property, you don't have to pay them rent because it's zenene v'zelo chaser, right? I am benefiting and the owner is not losing anything. However, but I will say, if you lend someone money, then no, you can't live in their property rent-free. Why? Because you are getting an additional benefit as a result of the loan. So remember again, what is Rava telling his father of Yosef? Father, you might be right that under normal circumstances, the halacha is if I go over to Reuven and I take his Eved, of course, we're talking about a case where Reuven's Eved is not engaged in any work for Reuven. And I take Reuven's Eved and I bring him to my house and I put him to work and I feed him and I take care of him. Technically speaking, I'm putter. I don't have to pay Reuven anything. Why? Because I'm actually doing Reuven a benefit. Why? Because I'm keeping his Eved busy. I'm keeping him out of trouble. Rescuing him from the clutches of idleness. That's great. But Father, you're in a different situation over here because you've lent Ruvain money. And remember, when you've lent someone money, you have to be careful about getting any other benefit from them because that benefit could be construed as ribis. And therefore, Father, this act of taking the Eved and bringing him to your house to do work after you lent the owner of this Eved money could really be problematic. Amrlei. So again, Rav Yosef said to his son Rava, you're right, Hadribi. You're right, I take it back. I made a mistake. Hadribi, literally I've changed my mind and I'm not going to go ahead and utilize the Eved anymore. So I'll say, what a profound Moser Haskell. Those words, Hadribi, sometimes are the hardest words to utter. Right, Hadribi, I changed my mind. You are right. I take it back. And I will say the godless of this also is this is a father to his son. Right? Sometimes it's very hard for a father to admit that he was wrong, right, to his child. And here again, you see Rav Yosef admitting to Rav Hadribi, Rav Yosef, the humility that is needed in life to be able to accept, I made a mistake. Right? Again, his son pointed out to him in a very respectful way that he erred in a matter of halacha, and the father accepted the musar, the beautiful musar. Incredible. Rabbi, Haiman Damasek Zuze, Drabise Bechavre. So what's the interesting case over here? So let's say I lent Ruvain money. And I both say the case in question over here is I lent him money and I lent him with ribis. I engaged illegally in an interest transaction. And let's say the amount of ribis that I lent him, the ribis amount was 4 zuz. That was the ribbis amount, okay? So we'll say, so now what happened? Watch this. So the Gemara says, so I lent Ruvain alone, and I lent him, the interest amount was 4 zuz. So we'll say, so what happened? So the Gemara says, so we'll say, so what happened? Good. So what happened in the marketplace? So you could go ahead and you could get 4 measures of wheat for a zuz. Okay. So now Ruvain's paying me back. Actually, forget about the 4 zuzim. Right? He's paying back the interest amount. Right? We'll call it a zuz. So we'll say. So what happens? Now he's paying the interest in wheat. So normally the way the marketplace works is you get 4 measures of wheat for a zuz. Okay, so now he's paying me a zuz of interest, but instead he decides, V'yayev le'ihu chamisha. Ruvain gives me 5 measures of wheat for the interest. Okay, so the interest amount would have normally been 4 measures of wheat. He gives me 5 measures of wheat. All right, so we'll say, so now, obviously, a ribbis transaction is illegal, and as we're going to see again, Beis Din does get involved. We extract ribbis. When ribbis has been given, so the legal system kind of is activated and the ribbis is clawed back. So I'll say, so now what's the shaila over here? What's the shaila? The shaila is what do we claw back in this case over here? Really, the ribbis was only 4 measures of wheat. Ruvain gave me 5 measures of wheat. So what does the halacha claw back? So ki mafkina minei, arba mafkina minei. Listen to this. The halacha only claws back for Ruvain 4 measures of wheat. Right? Why? Idach Azulehu de Kamozul Gabe. Because we'll say that 5th measure, that was something that Ruvain threw in. In other words, that's not the ribbis. That's not the ribbis. Now it's interesting. The Gemara doesn't call it a gift, which is interesting. But that's essentially how the halacha is treating it. Like Ruvain just gave me a cheaper wheat, or he gave me wheat at a cheaper rate. So it's interesting. When we claw back the ribbis, we only claw back the actual ribbis amount itself. Any amounts above and beyond the stipulated ribbis, essentially the halacha doesn't get involved with. Very interesting. Another case, Rava. A couple of cases like this. Rava Amar, Chamisha mafkinan minei, to meikara b'toras rabisa asalede. So that's Abai. So Abai says, we only claw back 4. Rava says, what are you talking about? We claw back all 5. All 5. Why is the additional money being given? Why is it being given? Ribbis. If it's ribbis, claw it back. But Ruvain paid extra ribbis. It doesn't matter. Any additional amounts that are being given b'toras ribbis, and therefore clawed all back. Next case. That's case 1. So Machlokes Abai and Rava. We'll say we paskin like Rava. In that case, we claw everything back. Any additional amounts are going to get clawed back as ribbis. Next, so we'll say now watch this. I'm sorry, this was the 4 zuz case, right? So now what happens? I'm the same case. I'm lending Ruvain money, and we'll say in this case over here, it's what we call ribbis ketzutza. This goes back to, when did we start Izun? No, this was 2nd day of last days. This was last day under Achron Shal Pesach. Ribbis ketzutza, right? Ribbis ketzutza is a defined amount of ribbis. This is classic ribbis, right? Classic ribbis is, I'm lending Ruvain $1,000. Pay me back $1,200. Right? Established, defined, predefined ribbis. So as I said, in this case over here, I lend Ruvain money, and again we have ribbis ketzutza. He's got to pay me back 4 zuz. That's the halacha, 4 zuz. Supposed to say, now what happened? Ruvain gave me a cloak as the ribbis payment. That's what he did. So he didn't give me 4 zuz, he gave me a cloak. Ki mafkinan minei, arba mafkinan minei, glima lo mafkinan minei. So we'll say this is interesting. Abaye says, when we extract the ribbis, so we'll say, so now, the cloak may be worth 4 zuz, maybe worth more than 4 zuz. The point over here that Abaye makes is when we claw back the ribbis, what do we claw back? Not the cloak. We just claw back 4 zuz. In other words, I will say, you see this theme over here in Abaye, that Abaye essentially says, when you have stipulated ribbis, the clawback is for the stipulated ribbis. That's it. The borrower chooses to give something more or different item. We're not getting into this. You made a ribbis transaction. We know exactly how much the ribbis is. That is the amount that lender is obligated to give back to borrower. So now in this case over here, Ruvain paid me back with a cloak. I keep the cloak, give back the 4 zuz. Rava says, no, glima mafkina mine, absolutely not. You have to give back the cloak. My time, what's the reason? Ki hechidil lemru glima demechsi v'koi glima deribisehu. Rava says it's very simple. The halacha can't let me keep the cloak. Why? Because Rava say that cloak is going to be identified as what? As what? A ribis cloak. And Rava say, you can't have me walking around town with a ribis cloak, right? Why? Because people are going to think that it's permitted to charge interest. So I said, by the way, it's similar to this idea that even like if the father dies, right? Let's say father stole, father dies, children inherit the object. Technically speaking, children are not obligated to give back the stolen property of their father, unless, of course, what? The object is extant, because then people will say, oh, there's the object that Reuven stole. So Rava posits over here the same idea as in the cloak. If I got this cloak as an interest payment, even if I'm giving back the money, no, you have to give back the cloak. Why? Because it's a cloak of ribis. And if you're walking around town, people are going to say, oh, Silber's wearing a ribis cloak. All right, next case. So I'll say, by the way, once again, we pass like Rava in that case as well. Give back the cloak. Give back the cloak. So also I say, see this theme over here. Whatever you're getting as a ribis payment, give it back. Give it back. Next, Amar Rava. Haiman demasik tracer zuzei drabise v'chavre va'agar lechatzer demiskara ba'asara va'ogri nehila b'tracer. So we'll say, now listen to this. Interesting case, right? I lend Reuven 12 zuz. Okay. Now we'll say, 12 zuz of interest. Okay, I lend him 12 zuz of interest. Now we'll say, now watch this. Now, in return, what Reuven does is he rents me a chatzar that would normally be rented out for 10 zuz. But we agreed that the rental amount essentially would be 12 zuz. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm getting the interest payment in the form of a rental. He's renting me his property. Now, both say, now, the way this is working is, but the rental price is inflated a little bit, right? So in other words, normally the rental price would be 10 zuz, but it's inflated a bit to be 12 zuz to satisfy the interest payment. Okay. So listen to this. Rabbi say, now what happens? Kimaf kina mine. Rabbi say, now the way this works is I already lived in the chatzar, so I got the interest benefit. Now Basin comes along and says, give back the interest benefit to Reuven, to the borrower. So watch this. Kimaf kina mine, tracer maf kina mine. So Rabbi says, now here's what's interesting. When there's a clawback, what's the clawback amount for? 12 zuz. Because that was a stipulated amount of interest. No. Ki agra hechi da ha kamishtar shili. Hashta de lo mishtar shili. Ki da agri kuli almahu da agarna. So I'll say, listen to this. So I should be able to say like this. I don't have to pay 10 zuz. At most, what should I have to pay? Sorry, I don't have to pay 12 zuz. What should I have to pay? 10 zuz. Because 10 zuz is the real value of the rental. Right? So in other words, I could say I was willing to accept the value as 12 zuz because essentially it was free money, so to speak. It was interest fine. Normally the rental will be worth 10 zuz. I'll accept it as 12 zuz because again, that's what we agreed upon. But now if you're clawing back money from me, why should you claw back 12 zuz? At most, you should claw back 10 zuz because that's the actual value of the rental. Because we say back to the lender, mishum de amrale savris v'kabalas. No, you accepted it. In other words, you accepted, you valued this rental at 12 zuz. So for you, this represented a 12 zuz value. And therefore, in the clawback, you're going to have to pay back 12 zuz. So I will say, so really 3 different scenarios, which we really boil down into 2 cases. Number 1, I will say, whatever you get for ribis, that's what you give back. So again, you're only supposed to get, 4 measures of wheat. You got 5, you give back 5. You got 4 zuz, but the borrower gave you a cloak. You give back the cloak. You got a service, and that service was overvalued, right? To match up to the amount of ribis. After you got that service, when you pay back the ribis, you pay back the actual amount of the ribis, irrespective of whether or not the service was inflated. Incredible, incredible. Mishnah, here we go. You could increase the amount for schar, for really essentially a rental, but not for a sale. What's the case over here? Here we go. Ketzad, Gemara says, what's the case? Fine. Let's just read the Mishnah. So Ketzad, Hiskilos Chatzero. So I'll say, so watch this. I rent Ruvain my field. V'amarlo, and I say to Ruvain, let's listen to this case. V'amarlo, Ime Achshav Ata Nosinli, Harehu Lecha Be'eser Slam. So I say, Ruvain, listen, if you agree to pay rent up front for the year, so I'll charge you 10 slime. 10 slime. L'shana. V'imshal chodesh b'chodesh. But if you want to pay month by month, which is fine, sela l'chodesh. Then it's 1 sela per month, essentially 12 slime. So if you prepay, there's a discount. If you prepay, right, you prepay for the year, 10 slime for the year. Ultimately, again, you want to pay month by month, it's going to be 12 sela for the year. 1 sela a month. So the Mishnah says, this transaction is mutter. This is mutter. Fine. That's case one. So I'll say that's a rental case. So essentially, the Mishnah is teaching me, if you want to prepay, there is no ribis issue with prepaying at a discount. Okay. In other words, we'll say, the chap over here is, now what's the chap? The chap is we don't look at this transaction as, well, since you're making me wait for my money, therefore I'm charging you more. Right? That's the way I could have looked at it. Remember again, I will say, what is ribis? All of ribis comes down to one phrase. Right? Klala deribisa agar natarle aser. Right? Any time that you get charged more because the lender has to wait for his money, that's called ribis and it's aser. So I will say, so the chiddush of the Mishnah is, even though again, if you pay me now, it's 10 slime, but if you pay me month by month, it's going to be 12 slime. That's not called ribis. That's not called getting charged more to have to wait for your money. Now, even though when you read that, it sounds like getting charged more because I have to wait for my money. We'll see why it's mutter in just a moment. On the other hand, machar lo es sadehu va'amar lo im me'achshav ata nosinli harehu shelcha be'elav zuz im legoren b'shnei ma'asar mana asar. On the other hand, I will say, if I'm selling my field to Ruvain, I say, Ruvain, if you pay me full amount right now, 1,000 zuz. But if there's going to be delayed payment. Now, literally, it means if we have to wait for the threshing season. In other words, if you're going to pay me over time, or you're going to pay me at a later date, then it's going to be 1,200 zuz. That's aser. That's aser. So I will say, so it sounds like same transaction, yet by a rental it's mutter, and by a sale it's aser. All right, so here we go. So Maishna Rishna, Maishna Seifa. So I think we're asking the obvious question. So what's the difference, I will say? So why is it again in the rental case, if you prepay the year of the rental and you get it at a discount, that's mutter, even though again if I pay month by month it's going to be more. But yet by a sale, if you pay everything right now, I'll give it to you for 1,000 zuz, pay me later on 1,200 zuz is aser. What's the pshat? So the Gemara says, Rabba v'Rav Yossi Termin Tarvayu, Schirus Eina Mishtalames Elal Basof. So Rabba said, this is very interesting. The way rentals work, I will say, is technically speaking, at least from halacha, a rental is only payable at the end of the rental. But as I will say, when you rent something, and this is actually very interesting, the halacha says the rental amount is only due after you've been given the service. It's interesting, right? So in other words, I think we're used to kind of thinking like rent is due on the first of the month, you're paying for the month ahead. The halacha says that's not the way it works. Once you get the service, then you're obligated to pay. So technically speaking, a rental is only due at the end. Now I'll say whether that's the end of every month or whether that's the end of the year, the point of a year is there's no such thing as prepaying for a rental. So therefore again, watch this. V'hai, kevan de lamata zmanei lemigvei, lav agar natale. So lav agar natar mashvilei. Dahachi shavya. So I'll say, listen to this. So therefore in the case of the rent, I say to Ruvain like this, Ruvain, you don't owe me any money now. You don't owe me any money now at all, right? Because the rental is only due at the end of the duration of the rental. So you don't owe me any money, right? You don't owe me anything. What I'm offering Ruvain is, look, you owe me nothing, so you don't have to pay me at all. And therefore, again, when I tell you that it's 1 sela a month, I will say, what does 1 sela a month represent? That's the actual value. That's the actual value. And what I'm offering you is the opportunity, ultimately, again, for a discount. I'm offering you a rent discount if you want it. So therefore, again, I will say, so because the way rent works is that rent is only due at the end of the rental duration, monthly or at the end of the year. And again, I'm telling you what the actual rate is. The actual rate is 1 salah per month, 12 salah, but I'm offering you an opportunity for a discount. There's nothing wrong. So therefore, I will say, remember again, I'm not charging you. We'll say everything is in how the transaction is structured. I'm not charging you more if you don't pay me up front. I'm charging you market if you don't pay me up. You don't have to pay me up front because that's not the way rentals work. Instead, what am I offering you? I'm offering you a discount if you want to prepay. That's not ribis. Ribis is only when you're charged more because you're not getting the money up front. That's not this case. Now, both say, if I inflated the rent, because at the end, even though rentals could be a little bit more objective than the sale of real estate, so if I inflated the rent, that's something else. But Lamaisa, assuming that I'm charging you regular market price, rental is not obligated until the end of the duration of the rental. And therefore, again, I'm not charging you any extra. Instead, I'm offering you the opportunity for a discount, and therefore that is permitted. Incredible. And that, by the way, that is halacha l'maisa. That is halacha l'maisa, the way rentals work. At least in halacha, we'll say, obviously, remember, the laws of ribis are fundamentally dictated also by market realities. So now, for example, if in the rental market, the way it works now is that, no, rentals are payable up front, then that could potentially change the dynamics over here. But let's just go with the Gemara right now. So let's go weiter. Seifa, keva dizvinininu. Now, when it comes to Seifa, remember again, when it comes to a sale, so let's say, how do sales work in halacha? So given the zinin who by the mishkal daime achshav hilchach agar natrale huva aser. So we'll say. So now remember again. We'll say. How does it work with a sale? How does it work with a sale? When you buy something, when do you give the money? Let's see. When do you give the money? Now, at the time of the sale. At the time of the sale, that's the way it works. I'm selling you something. Give me my money. So we'll say. So now it's clear in that case. If you give me my money now, the amount is X. If you make me wait, it's X plus Y. So I'll say, why is it X plus Y? Because you're making me wait for my money. What is that called? That's called ribis. So I'll say, it's great. It's a very similar. So therefore, everything depends on the nature of the transaction. When you sell, in a sale, money is due upon the sale. So therefore, pay me now is 1,000 zuz. You're not going to pay me now, you're going to pay me later. That's fine. You're making me wait for my money. There's an additional charge for that. That's called ribis. That's called ribis. Incredible. Amar Rava. So let's say the rabbis found the scriptural proof, a scriptural remes for this idea that rentals are only due right at the end of the rental. Okay, so let's just bring up a scriptural proof to this idea that at least biblically, rentals will do at the end and not at the beginning. Kischir shana b'shana, like the rental of 1 year in another year. It shows you that the rental for 1 year was only due the next year. I will say, by the way, it's actually interesting that it sounds like the way rentals were done actually, at least biblically, is that you'd pay in yearly increments. So not even monthly. In other words, it was a monthly amount, but due at the end of the year. Okay, so for Rabbi we make this fundamental distinction between a rental and a sale. A rental because it's only due at the end. Therefore, again, you could offer a discount. You could offer a discount because here, no problem. You want to pay regularly, pay regularly. That's fine. I'm offering you a discount. That's mutter. A sale that's due now, to offer one amount now and a higher amount if you pay later, that is ribis. Let's go weiter. Im legor mishtei masar manash aser. So let's listen to this. I'm Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman said as follows. Tarsha Shari. Okay, now we'll say, okay, here we go. So now we're getting into a little bit more of an in-depth sugya. It hasn't really been in-depth up until now, right? So now we're getting into a little bit more of an in-depth sugya of Tarsha. So Rav Nachman says a Tarsha is mutter. Okay, so we'll say, what is Tarsha? Take a look at Rashi. Tarsha Shari. Rashi says, Limkar schora b'hamtana biyoser midameha obilvad shlo yifrosh shlo ime achshav hari hulu b'pachos el yimkar stam bekach vekach lion ploni. So Rabbi say, watch this. Rav Nachman says like this. Tarsha means I'm selling merchandise to Ruvain at a higher price. Right? I'm selling it at a higher price. So Rabbi say it's actually like it's like a little bit of a reverse future. Right? Futures are normally at a discount. So this is, I'm selling, Avi Fogel told me that yesterday. I'm actually selling this at a higher price for later on. So what I'm saying, I'm telling you now, wheat, right? But we're locking in a higher price later on. Now, what's the chap about Tarsha, I will say, is there is no mention of if you pay me now, I'll sell to you at a discount, right? Rather, again, it's just like the second part, which is I'm selling you now wheat, right? We're transacting wheat now to be delivered at some future date for a higher price. That's called the tarsha. So the Gemara says, so Rav Nachman says that is mutter. All right, so the Gemara says, okay, let's analyze this. But one second, we said before that Allah Lamaisa, if you go ahead and you're selling something now, and if they pay one price now, it's a lower amount. Now the chap over here is, in this transaction, if the purchaser were to come now and offer me a lower amount, I would accept it now for the same produce. But the point over here is if you pay later, it's going to be this inflated amount. But that's never articulated. So yet the Gemara says, but one second, we just said in the Mishnah that if you do a sale like this, where if it's one price now, it's aser, one price now it's lower, and another price later on is higher, that's aser, that's ribis. So Amrle Hasam Katzle, Hachalo Katzle. It's a very simple distinction, I will say. Right? What's the simple distinction? At the end of the day, in the Mishnah that was stipulated. In the Tarsha case, it was never stipulated. In other words, Rabbi says, so in the Mishnah's case where it was explicitly stipulated, pay now one price, pay later a higher price, that's ribis. In the Tarsha case, I simply go over to Ruvain and I say, Ruvain, I'm selling you wheat due in a year from now, right? Money due in a year from now for $1,000. So Ruvain says, okay, but if I pay you now $800, would that work? Sure. Absolutely. But it's not part of the stipulation. So because it's not part of the stipulation, therefore, again, it is not a ribis scenario. Amar Papa, Tarsha Didi Shari. So Papa said, my Tarsha is permitted. If you take a look, fine. Tarsha Didi Shari. My Tarsha is permitted. So both say, so essentially what's happening, we're going to see this Tarsha mechanism essentially removes any discussion about a contemporary price and links everything to a future price. Because it's actually a great chap. The only time you get into ribis, I will say, is essentially when there are two prices. One if you pay now, and one if you pay later. Because the only reason why there's a higher later price is because you're making me wait for my money. So essentially what Tarsha says is, if I know you're not going to pay now, we just eliminate that current price and just lock in this transaction for the future price. And because there's only one future price, there's no ribis. It's fascinating. So Rav Papa says, my Tarsha is permitted. They say, what's Rav Papa's Tarsha? Look at Rashi. Tarsha Didi Shari. O says Shechar Tamarim Haya. So Rav Papa was made date beer. He made date beer. So I'll say, so what happened? So umocher lo bizman hazol, and he would go ahead and he would sell it during the time that it was cheap, Tishrei. Kishar shal nisan umamtila nisan. So listen, now watch this. So Rav Papa was made date beer. So the chap of Rav Papa was like this. In Tishrei, date beer was cheap, and in Nisan the prices went up. So I'll say, so what happened over here? So what happened? See, he would sell in Tishrei for Nisan prices. Right? He would sell in Tishrei for Nisan prices. So the Gemara says like this. So my timer. So what's the reason? See, he says, Shcharai didi lo pasa. So first of all, my beard never spoils. Zuzi lo tzarichna. And I don't need the money right now. So I don't need the money. So I said to Papa was saying like this, is I don't need to sell beer in Tishrei. I don't need to sell it. So anahu dikavidna milsa gabi lokeach. So now Papa says like this. He says at the end of the day, if you want to purchase beer from me, I don't need to sell it now. So I'm willing to wait until Nisan when the price goes up, and I'll sell then. If you want to buy from me now, that's fine, but I'm charging you Nisan prices. So I'm going to have Sheshes braid Rav Idi la Papa. My chazimar dika azlis basar didach. So he said to Rav Papa, why you only look at this transaction through your vantage point? Why don't you look at it ultimately again through the vantage point of the purchaser? Zil basar dido deilo havalahu zuzi havu shakli ki hashta deles lu zuzi shakli ki yukar de la kamei. From the purchaser's perspective, I will say, watch this. We'll say, Now you say, think to yourself like this. I don't understand. So Rav Papa is selling date beer in Tishrei for Nisan prices. Now both say, so why would anyone buy from Rav Papa? It's simple. What's the answer? Credit. Rav Papa was willing to sell on credit. So he said, because I don't need the money right now, Rav Papa said, I'll sell you on credit, but I understand if you're buying on credit, you're getting Nissan prices. So Rav Papa says, I have every right to do this. Number one, I don't need the money right now. And number two, my beer doesn't go bad. So therefore, I want to wait till Nissan to sell the beer so I can go ahead and get the higher price. But you want to buy from me now because you want beer now, and I'm willing to sell you on credit, that's fine, but I'm selling you on Nissan prices. They said to Rav Papa, that's fine that from your perspective this works, but from the purchaser's perspective, this is ribis. Why? Because we'll say if the purchaser had money now, then what? If you have money in Tishrei, then what are you doing with your money? Cheap date beer. So now I, the purchaser, don't have money. So because I don't have money, what do I have to do? I have to go ahead and buy beer at a more expensive price because I'm getting it on credit. So I'll say, so why am I paying more money because I'm getting it on credit? Because I'm making the seller wait until Nissan to get his money. That's ribis. So essentially, the Siddur of Papa is, this might work beautifully for you, but from the purchaser's perspective, it is absolutely ribis. Rav Chama said, Tarsha didi vaday shari. So Rav Chama said, my Tarsha is absolutely okay. Now take a look at Rashi just a moment. Rav Chama, Tarsha didi vaday shari. So this is so fascinating. Mocher prakmat yahaya, mocher b'makom azol. Kishar shunim karem makom ayoker umamtin lohen vehin malin also makom ayoker for makabel. So let me tell you this essentially outside. So Rav Chama had this great chap. Rav Chama would go ahead and sell. He was a merchandise salesman, but what would he do? He would essentially give merchandise to other merchants, and he would tell them, "Listen, guys, here's the deal. For this merchandise, you owe me $1,000." Now, I'll say $1,000 represented the value that merchandise could fetch on the open market in a different city, right? So you owe me $1,000. Then what would happen? And they would lock that in. The merchants would then take the merchandise to wherever they would sell it. They'd sell the money. They would then have the rights to use that money for their own business purposes, for the entire duration, knowing that whatever it is, 6 months from now, they would have to bring Rav Chama back the stipulated amount. Right? So therefore, again, he says, I'm giving you this merchandise, you owe me now, $1,000 for this merchandise. Between now and 6 months, they have to sell the merchandise and they have use of the money the entire time. Just in 6 months from now, bring me back my merchandise. Bring back my money. Bring back my money. Now look at Rashi. He goes on. He says, Now both said the whole chap was Rabbi Chama. As long as the merchandise was extant, Rabbi Chama had achrayis. He took responsibility for the merchandise. So if something happened, it was stolen, it broke, he would bear full responsibility. Now, interestingly enough, this wasn't considered to be a loan. See, the chap over here was like this. The value of the merchandise in the area where Rav Chama gave it to them was, let's say, $500. But if you take it to a faraway place, ultimately, again, it could be worth $1,000. So halacha l'maisa over here, there's no ribis in this situation. Why is there no ribis? There's no loan. Why is there no loan? Because halacha l'maisa, essentially, Rav Chama retains full responsibility over the merchandise till the moment that it is sold. Once it's sold, the proceeds become a loan. But that's fine, because the proceeds, will say $1,000 is the loan amount, and that's the amount that they're obligated to give back. There's no ribis. Incredible. So the Gemara says, listen to this, that this is permitted, totally permitted. My time. Well, what's the reason? Because Rav Chama says, I maintain full responsibility over that money. So by the way, there's additional benefit. Additional benefit number one is I maintain full responsibility over the goods. Number two, I will say, ultimately, because it's goods of a Talmid Chacham, parsonage. Talmidei Chacham's goods are tax exempt. Not only that, Talmidei Chachamim have first rights of sale in the marketplace. So these guys get the added benefit of utilizing my merchandise. So Rabbi say, so v'hilchasa amud beis, v'hilchasa ki Rav Chama. So Rabbi say the halacha is like Rav Chama. So Rabbi say this is incredible. So Rabbi say understand what's happening over here. Rav Chama, Rabbi say I just want to point out this is the basis for heter iska. Again, we don't have time to get into it now, but Amir Hashem, we are going to find time to be able to get into this. The idea here is that Rav Chama is giving over merchandise or money, right? But not ultimately again as a loan. It's being given over ultimately again. Essentially, the merchants were his agents. They were his shluchim. They were operating on his behalf to sell. In this case, to sell the merchandise. Once the merchandise was sold, the proceeds are now a loan. But that's fine, because those proceeds, that $1,000, that's what you owe me. There's no ribis. It only becomes a loan the moment that the merchandise is sold. So the whole chap over here is they're acting as his agents with the merchandise for the bulk of the time. Only once the merchandise is sold does it become a loan, and the loan amount that they get, right? The loan is the same amount, it's the same $1,000. There's no ribis, and they have the right to use that loan amount the entire, which every borrower has the right to use the loan amount the entire duration of the loan. Incredible, absolutely incredible. Again, more to say on this, but not today. Rabbi Lazar said that ribis ketzutza, predefined interest, is clawed back by the Beis Din. So also remember again, Rabbi Yanai said that in a case, ultimately again, a psika ala peros, right? A forward future contract where Allah Lamaisa, you could end up having to give back produce that has an elevated value and that's permitted, assuming you satisfy the criteria of yeshlo or yotza hashar, that you could pay back either in the form of produce or even in additional proceeds. In other words, you could convert the value of the produce as well. So I will say three profound pieces of halacha. Number one, the tarsha of Rav Chama works. By the way, the tarsha of Rav Nachman also works. Heter Iska combines a number of these different things, which we'll get to. But this tarsha arrangement works. That's number one. Number two, we claw back ribis, right? Ribis, and I will say, how do we claw back ribis? In the exact form it was given. That's what we saw today in the Gemara. And number three, psika la peros. I will say last couple of days, psika la peros, forward future contract is permitted as long as either what? Yeshlo or yotza hashar. Again, I will say, remember, keep a running tally of this stuff. Otherwise, not going to retain it. Right? So yatsa hashar, or you're thinking to yourself, too late already, right? No, it's never too late. I will say, come on. I will say, if you're going to take Daf Yomi seriously, take it seriously, take notes, keep everything going. Otherwise, again, it's mamish like it's just drinking coffee. Hey, so Lemais again, so yatsa hashar, or yeshlo, and I will say, now we've seen a psika la peros. When you pay that back, you can, like Rabbi Yana, you can either pay it back in produce or value or actual money of that produce as well. Incredible. Mishnah, here we go. So now watch this. I sell Ruvain a field, and Ruvain gives me partial payment. Va'amarlo, a masai shetirtza, right? Have a mos, v'tol es shalcha. So I say, so now what happens? And I say to Ruvain, okay, listen, you give me partial payment, no problem, down payment. When you bring me the rest of the money, I'll give you possession of the field. Fantastic. So both say aser. It is aser. Now both say now what's aser? Now what's aser? Rashi says over aser lasos came davka da amarle lechi maisis motramos kaname achshav lefichach aser lasos came shim yochal. So both say the issue over here, as we can see, is in the Gemara over here, is who gets to eat the produce in the interim? The problem with this type of transaction is, so I'm selling the field to Ruvain. Ruvain gives me the money. Okay, so it's a down payment. I said, Ruvain, fine. When you go ahead and you pay me the rest of the money, the field will be yours. Now, Rashi is already giving us coming attractions that halacha l'maisa. What I'm saying is the field will be yours retroactively from the time that you gave me the first down payment. The problem is in this interim, who gets to eat the produce? Because they both say we're running into a ribis problem regardless. If I the seller eat it, then in the event that Ruvain does not go ahead and pay for it, then Lamaisa, I've gotten a loan plus produce, right? And if Ruvain does pay for it, ultimately there's ribbis as well. Either way you cut it, there's ribbis on whoever is consuming the produce. So he'll vo al sadeh va'amarlo im iyata nosili mikan vad shalosh shanim hari hi sheli. So we'll say again, if halacha Lamaisa, the Rosh says this is a collateralized case. It's number 2 case. I lend Ruvain money and he gives me a field. He gives me collateral. And we say, if you do not pay me back the loan from now until 3 years, Hare hi shalo, the field becomes mine. Hare hi shalo. Ultimately, again, the field belongs to him. The field belongs to him, and so does the produce. And this is what Baitos did as well. Okay, we'll say we'll define that case in the Gemara a little bit later. Let's go. Says the Gemara, Mi ochel peros. So we'll say in this type of transaction where I'm selling Reuven a field, right? He gave me a down payment, and the field will become his upon payment of the field. So we'll say full payment. Who gets the peros in the interim? Rafuna Amar Mocher Ochel Peros. Rafuna says the seller gets the produce in the interim. Rav Anan Amar Mishal Shnes HaPeros. Rav Anan says no, essentially we kind of put the peros in escrow. We put in escrow to figure out who is going to get it. So the Gemara says, it's not a contradiction. Had the Amar le'lechi maisis kani, had the Amar le'lechi maisis kani me'achshav. So I'll say it's not a contradiction. Everything depends on how you structure the transaction. If halacha l'maisa, I say, Ruvain, you gave me the down payment, the field is only yours when you pay me the full amount. So I'll say in that case it's clear. Who owns the field until the full amount is tendered? Who owns it? Who owns it? Me. Which means who gets to eat the peiros during that entire time? Me. As opposed to if I say, Ruvain, when you pay me the money, the field will become yours retroactively. Oh. So I'll say, so now, in that interim, we don't know who owns the field. Because we don't know who owns the field, essentially, we can't let either party go ahead and partake of the produce. So we have to stop over here for today. We're fine. Tomorrow's a short. Amar Aleph is a shorter daf. So we'll get through everything. Not a problem. Maybe I'll record a little bit more today. Also, I'll say tremendous shkoyach. What a schus to learn this incredible parak with all of you. Shkoyach. Have a good Erev Shabbos. All right, Chaver on Zoom. A good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Chaver Eretz Yisrael. A good Erev Shabbos. Beautiful to see everyone. I'm jealous. Permissible jealousy. Permissible jealousy.
This would be a longer question.